start really at a basic level. And that basic level is helping people understand that the future is now. The future is not 10 years from now. It's not 20 years from now. It's now. And in the context of that concept, it is understanding that. I always like to quote Andrew Ng. He is the brain behind the development of Google's AI strategy, and he's also a Stanford professor. And he said a few years back that AI was the new electricity. There would not be any function or any sector that would not be affected by AI. So first of all, it's, you know, fundamentally grounding kind of where we are in that context. It's not about robots, and it's not about, you know, people fall in two camps typically. It's, you know, robots are going to take all of our jobs, or they're going to kill us all, honestly. And so,
iRobot, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's really about starting out with a fundamental. Where I sit is really kind of starting to raise awareness and training about the fact that AI is here. It is commoditized in a way that even small businesses can use. Primarily, small businesses use AI from a back office perspective, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But really kind of helping small businesses really kind of evolve and kind of look at this in a broader context. So the broader context is, how can you use AI and automation, not just to save money, not just from an efficiency standpoint, but how can you do what, you know, it's kind of talked about in this book that I love called Human Plus Machine. How do we find those really interesting spaces between the AI and automation and the human to create new value and find new opportunities? So that really, to me, is a sweet spot. It's about how do you leverage the AI for growth? Of course, you've got to have the systems in place for the back office stuff, for efficiency and accuracy, but how do you use AI to amplify the work that you do? Does that make sense? To help you grow and expand. So the first part of it literally is raising awareness about the availability of AI and what AI can do for you, and not that, and understanding that there are, you know, tons and tons of platforms available that are centered just on small business to be able to step into that space in that game. The other messaging and training that I like to provide too is we can no longer afford not to use it. I'm a consulting practice. I have a consulting practice, coaching practice, right? And so evolving in the background are all of these systems and platforms that are AI infused to provide an amped up version of what I do and provide deeper insights than what I can do even as an expert, as a human, and one person doing that, or a team of people doing that. So even as a consultant, right, even as a coach, I need to be able to embrace that. If I am a gym owner, I have a brother who owns a couple of gyms. He's now having, not just from the back office perspective, right, but how can you utilize artificial intelligence and some of these platforms that integrate virtual reality to create not only competitive advantage, even with a gym, but to create the experiences that are compelling enough to be able to command a piece of the market that's sustainable. And so whether you're a consultant, a gym owner, a tutor, right? Yep. Or, you know, you can go the whole spectrum on that. Failing to optimize these systems is not a sustainable approach. So the first thing we need to do is help people understand that it's approachable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. So if I'm a small business owner, I know nothing about AI. I've heard about it. I've heard about all the stuff you just mentioned. Where would I go to just even understand what is possible?
I always like to show this chart. Can I show you?
Yeah, please. Please do.
Yeah, share the screen.
Yeah.
Not yet. Let's see. What I want you to do when you take a look at this screen, I always use this kind of as an opener, right? All you see are dots and colors, right?
Logos, yeah.
Yeah, and logos, right? This is the state of AI in the marketplace as of 2019. This does not include every solution. These are the most prolific players in the market. And I always use this, that is a lot, right? So these are some of the most prolific players in the market as it relates to every aspect of the enterprise. So let's kind of drill down. So if you look on the left-hand side, if we look here, it's really all about infrastructure, right? Infrastructure and setting up the business, data integration, right? Access to data, right? All of that sort of stuff. If you look, what else? Data integration. Think about larger enterprises that have 5 or 6. They may have, SAS, they may have Salesforce and several Workday, several others, and none of them really speak to each other. So a big chunk of these is about data integration and creating dashboards that synthesize information so that leaders have a broader view of the business and can make better decisions. So that's just on the infrastructure side. Let's go over here. That's the analytics and business intelligence, of course, but let's take a look here. This represents a solution across nearly every function. Every one of these represents a task that has been removed and replaced by AI to either amplify what the human can do, right? Or to improve accuracy, efficiency, or create a better experience, and ultimately all of that together creating a better competitive advantage. Marketing, sales, B2B, customer experience. What else? Productivity, back office. Look at all of the fields. Whether you're in security, finance. I did a training in 2018 for a large government agency, and it was for a department full of folks who worked in risk management. And part of my training and kind of the workshop for them was really oriented around how risk management was going to change. This was not my opinion. This was coming from deep research, whether it was from Accenture, Deloitte, or even PwC. And one of the insights was that by 2025, this was pre-COVID now, right? So a lot of it is accelerated, that we would only need about 60% of the risk management folks that we had then, going back to like 2015, 2016. And that much of what they do can be managed utilizing AI and predictive analytics. And so that was driving a reimagination, if you will, just as AI is across all of these other roles, as we extract roles and as we extract tasks and functions and replace them with AI, it gives the organization an opportunity to reimagine the role to deliver higher value. So now we start asking people in risk management and finance to add in, we want you to have some more cross-functional experience, right? We want you to have, a higher level of digital literacy. We want you to have a fundamental understanding of AI so that you can help us ask some of the questions we need and to propel the business in places where we need it to go. Human capital, this is my domain. Every one of these represents a solution across the entire employee experience, right? Many of these are not even all that expensive. A small business can deploy many of these, particularly as it relates to and compete on a level playing field with recruiting talent.
So this is recruitment, this is retention, this is employee data, this is everything. All
of this under human capital. So think about this in the context of attorneys and legal work, risk management work, finance. Human resources, finance, accounting, marketing are some of the fastest areas across an organization that are being impacted by AI.
Right.
Advertising, education, real estate, government, intelligence, healthcare. And what's interesting on the healthcare side, it's not just about the practice. It's also about utilizing these systems on the administrative and operational side too. So I always like to show this slide to give people really kind of a snapshot of where we are today. This is not all inclusive. This is a snapshot of the largest players in the marketplace providing solutions to large enterprises all the way down to small business.
But so I look at this, Terri, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to even figure out.
It is a lot.
It's a lot to, that's a lot. That's overwhelming. So, I mean, are there any dominant players that would say, okay, fine, we would help SMEs, I don't know, become more efficient, automate some of their processes, automate some of their marketing and, the lead generation and, all those kinds of things that SMEs often struggle with?
Yeah, so there are platforms and there are too many to name. And it depends on the specific problem you want to you're looking to address. Right. So one of the fundamental steps when you're thinking about deploying an AI strategy is what problem do I need to address first? Right. Okay. So for a small business, oftentimes it's freeing up time, freeing up brain matter, right? Freeing it up time so that you can focus as a small business owner and do the work of a CEO and be that visionary for the business without drowning in the other stuff. So the first place to start typically is on the back office side. What can be automated that's customer facing? That's the first start because that frees up time and it frees up resources. The next iteration that I recommend is then taking a look at how you can use AI systems to amplify or improve the experience that you provide or the product or service that you provide, right? But for small business, it's typically about taking a look at how you can free up time on the back office side of it. That's key.
And I think sales and marketing as well, that cycle. That is
Absolutely.
something SMEs really struggle with. And in terms of the digital world, that's an even bigger
Yeah.
problem now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they can even start small. I mean, if you think about it, you think about IG, you think about Facebook, you think about Twitter, and a host of other social media platforms. They all provide their own analytics. So for someone that wants to even get their toes wet, if you will, in that space, just, really kind of working through and understanding the analytics that are used on those platforms provides, really some insights to move to the next step.
Right.
When on the marketing and advertising side, if I were to take it to the next iteration, then it's about integrating that approach and integrating that strategy across more of those platforms.
Okay.
So back office, sales and marketing, getting insights about customers, getting insights about what campaigns are working, what campaigns are not working. All of those are easily accessible.
So tell us more about your training and education and skills development work in the AI space.
Sure. So let's see, what am I working on? So one of the most exciting projects that I'm working on now is working with a large e-commerce company that is looking to deploy an assessment for candidates utilizing AI to assess emotional intelligence. So I'm working on a project to help, train algorithms to be able to better assess emotional intelligence and soft skills from candidates. So that's exciting. What else do I do?
That's a big one, because in Africa we really struggle with I think with most, even with the industrial world, we have an education system that's hundreds of years old, almost Victorian pretty much. It doesn't really fit with where we're going with the fourth industrial revolution. And so I think a lot of people looking for talent struggle. They're recruiting the wrong way, they're not retaining staff. What would you say about AI in the context of soft skills, competence building, training, developing, human capital to fit with the needs of industry and the fourth industrial revolution?
Excellent question. I will go right directly. The World Economic Forum several years ago identified really kind of how the shift in skills and how the emergence of soft skills were really kind of rising on the list of importance, and soft skills around creativity, leadership, collaboration, right, problem solving, and all of that. So an organization, in order to do that, first of all, you need to have the systems and infrastructure in place to be able to spread your time across training people to do the job that they need today, and also invest in them in the future. So a lot of companies approach this in different ways. So one way is that a lot of companies partner with other platforms that curate content around learning, and they use AI for customized and personalized learning outcomes tied directly to the performance of the role. What's another area that's emerging that's interesting to me is also called outskilling. So we have large corporations. This is actually pretty cool. So large corporations that are saying, look, we are really interested in the experience of our workers. We understand that our workers will be impacted as the unfolding of the future of work continues to happen. And we're also concerned about our brand, both our employer brand and our consumer brand. So they start, let's say for an example, AT&T, for an example, knows that a significant portion of their workforce over the course of the next 3 to 4 years will be displaced as a result of automation. So they start preparing those workers and providing platforms for training in skills that they will need as they move out of the organization. That is a new space that has emerged over the course of the last couple of years, but it is truly a way of humanizing the experience for workers and really creating a sustainable aspect of your employer brand moving forward. Curating content is always almost one of the easiest ones too. And I say this as an educator. I've gone to school for a very long time, and I have more letters than I can count after my name. I say that in context. And the context that I say that is that we all have to continue to learn. The question now is, the part of the currency of the future is learning, understanding what, when, why, and how you need to learn. Another degree isn't always the answer. Right. Why? Because we're seeing this emerge with companies like AT&T, Apple, IBM, and several others that are moving into the space that are saying it's okay if you don't have a degree as long as you have this requisite set of skills that we can test for and assess to move you in, and we'll take care of the rest. But now, I mean, there are options like Coursera. I recommend to anyone that will hear me, Coursera offers a lot of free coursework. Everybody should be taking courses on AI. IBM, I'm sorry, not IBM, Microsoft has the Microsoft AI School. They've developed it over time, and it's free, and they've broken it down by categories. I haven't looked in a couple of months, but the last time that I looked, they had categories of specific to medicine, finance, education, and others. So from the learning aspect of how you skill these folks up, if you don't have the infrastructure to do it, create an opportunity to gather curated content for skills that workers need in the moment and that they'll need in the future. The soft skills, that's still kind of a difficult concept for folks to muster because they're still learning and answering, really kind of asking questions around what soft skills are, right? Because we really kind of stereotype them sometimes in the left brain and right brain stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, but they're beyond that. And so we need leaders that are empathetic. We need leaders who are creative and can, what's the word I want to use? Use analogous thinking, right? To help solve problems. We now have to solve problems that we didn't have to solve before as we move through the future of work. So we need people with a strong sense of those soft skills, creativity, innovation, the ability to analyze, all of those things to be able to help come up with solutions to problems that are new and those that will emerge. And so that's where the importance of those soft skills come in. Resilience, flexibility, adaptability, training for that. I do a lot of training for that, and that becomes really important.
So what would you say to a minister of of education, anywhere in the world, who is really serious about transforming, a nation's human capital? What would your top few tips be for approaching education reform? Because that's a big question.
Yes. So a couple questions for education reform. We need to break down silos, right? Because the workers now need an integrated set of skills across multiple disciplines to be able to successfully move into the workplace and to be able to deliver the value that employers want. So breaking down the silos so that the learning becomes interdisciplinary. Another challenge and challenge that higher education faces too sometimes is understanding where to plug in tech, right? And understanding that tech does not just reside in a CIS program, right? And it doesn't just reside in an engineering program, that folks that work in HR that are going to be working with platforms that use AI to assess candidates, whether it's biometric and psychometric analysis, they need to have a fundamental understanding of tech and have AI fluency. Everyone needs that. It's understanding that humanities don't reside on the first half of your education, because that's where the learning around soft skills comes in. So integrating and blending those. It's an article that came out, I believe, by the Chronicle of Higher Education last year. And the really kind of disturbing and fascinating part at the same time was that in order to accomplish some of the things that I just discussed, it would take higher ed nearly 2 decades to reform, right? Wow. However, it would only take employers 7 to 8 years to find workarounds as their confidence in higher education institutions continues to wane. So my recommendation is take a look at how the world of work is shifting. Take a look at how just what we know is that COVID accelerated the future of work by nearly a decade. All of us now understand what accelerated transformation looks like. Much of what has changed is not going to, much of what we've experienced by way of change, whether it's how we work, consumer behavior, much of that is not going to return to the way that it was. So if we can rationalize the amount of change that we just experienced in the course of the last several months, and in many cases, how successfully organizations acclimated, both large and small. But that should, really kind of, grow this sense of understanding and belief and confidence that we can continue to do that. So higher ed needs to understand that too. So it's preparing people for the future, right? So preparing for a future that is different and doesn't look like much of what we've done in higher ed over the course of the last couple hundred years. We have institutionalized, processes and structures and and pomp and circumstance and all of that here in the States around education too, but really a keen focus. I'm confident that many institutions of higher learning will rise to the occasion. Why? Because they were forced into it because of COVID. So not just because of remote learning, the impact of reduced budgets, the impact of lower enrollment, and all of those forces coming together are going to help to transform and change education. But a focus on the responsibility of higher ed, four-year institutions, research institutions, a responsibility to take these students and give them the skills that they need to prepare them for work, and to not relegate that concept to trade schools is really where we need to be.
Okay, Dr. Terri Horton, thank you so much for your time. It's been so enlightening speaking to you.
My pleasure.
I think we've had a lot of tidbits that we can implement into some of our white papers and recommendations. So thank you so much for being part of our ecosystem conversations with ScaleUp Africa.
My pleasure.